For the first time in my life, I felt like I was staring death right in the face. I was fully conscious throughout all this. It was just like nothing I'd ever experienced, obviously, in my life before. I remember it moved and just kind of disappeared down the track, and I just thought, wow, I'm alive. I can't believe I'm alive. And I was suddenly transported into a beautiful, calm space. Wherever I am, this is really, really great.
Did you have a body at this time? Did it feel like a body, or were you feeling something different for yourself? David, I don't know how many miles it is from here to the UK, but we're a little far, and I appreciate you taking the time. 9 a.m. over here, 5 p.m. by you, and I'm excited to hear your story, your near-death experience, and everything that came from that. So again, I know you told the story before, and I'm going to always do my best for people that have told stories like this to try to pry into it, hopefully in a different way, but we'll see what happens. So feel free to get going with your experience however you please.
Sure. Okay. Well, my story starts at a rail station in Cambridge in the UK. And I'd say it starts there because I'd been seeing a friend off and who was had to get back to London. And it was a cold February day, not a cloud in the sky, really very beautiful, crisp day. I helped her onto the car with her bags and her luggage and what have you. And I was giving her a hug and a kiss just to say goodbye. And it was at that point we heard the emergency buzzers starting to go, for the doors to close. And so I stepped back, but I stepped back a bit too slowly. And as I did, the bottom corner of my coat got trapped. It was like a 3/4 length sheepskin. It was quite thick quality, and it got wedged right in the doors as they closed to, and I couldn't pull it free due to that thickness and quality. And I just thought, well, this ain't too good. So I wasn't familiar actually with that actual rail line. So I just turned around and yelled out for help. I figured there would be a guard on the platform and all that stuff, but there wasn't one on this actual route. So no one was turning up. So I started banging on the windows and then yelling out really loud, hoping that maybe the driver of that train would hear. It's quite a long train, and it was on a bend. So I thought, maybe he can't see me. Anyhow, the engine started to roar. They started to rev up, And I remember looking through the glass and seeing my friend who was seeing off, looking at me and just seeing this look of absolute terror in her eyes, And this, for the first time in my life, I felt like I was staring death right in the face, as it were. It was terrifying, because I had time to actually think this through, and I thought, right, I went into fight or flight mode, and I thought, I'm going to survive this, whatever. So the train started to pull out the station at quite a fast speed. You don't realise how fast they pull out of these stations until you're attached to the outside of it, and then you feel every gear shift. I lost my footing and I was dragged along the platform edge, and then I was pulled between the space of that platform and the speeding train. Under I went. And I remember at that point, I just heard this almighty rip, and it must have been my coat ripping. And I remember it's almost like the carriage, the car itself seemed to almost disappear, and I was suddenly sucked into this dark sort of black hell. I was being thrown around violently like a rag doll. I was just like being thrown and tossed, and I was fully conscious throughout all this, and I just thought it was just like nothing I'd ever experienced, obviously, in my life before, and I don't think any person should have to go through it, but I did, and suddenly I found myself being thrown down in between the tracks as the train was still speeding over my head. Well, not over my head literally, but above me, and in fact, I remember at that point thinking, right, it's not over yet. I could get hit by part of the undercarriage. So I thought, keep your face right down into the gravel, which is what I did. Almost like I was referencing in my mind, I was thinking about all the Indiana Jones movies and 007 and all that, all the superheroes. What would they do? Now, get your face down in the gravel, mate. So that's what I did, And the train eventually moved on. And maybe that did save me, Anyhow, I remember it moved and just kind of disappeared down the track, and I just thought, wow, I'm alive. I can't believe I'm alive. And I was in agony. I was in so much pain, and I looked to sort of see what had happened to me, and the coat that I was wearing was now ripped to shreds, and I could see all my arm was exposed. It was completely ripped open as well. And I thought, I better get my cell phone and phone for help, because I was scared another train was going to come speeding down the track after that one. So of course my cell phone was completely smashed to pieces. But the emergency guys arrived really quick. They jumped down on the track and started cutting through my clothes and trying to keep me calm, and somehow they got me on a stretcher and onto the platform, which is mad because the drop is really huge, And they got me into the back of the ambulance, and I remember the doctor who was like in charge of the whole thing in the back of that ambulance said, "Look, we've just come from a small hospital around the corner. That's why we got here so quick. But the one that's really going to save your life is a 25, 30-minute drive. Do you think you can hang in there?" And I said, "Yeah, let's go." So the sirens went, and we just went off like a rocket down the highway, and it's that thing where you go through your whole life, don't you? Whenever you hear sirens, you think, "Oh, I hope that's not me one of these days." And there it was me. But anyhow, we arrived at the hospital, and I remember when we got there, we arrived and we were in the emergency department, and there was a whole team of people waiting, nurses, medics and stuff. And they got me in there and they started to work on me. And I was still pretty scared because I knew that I was losing a lot of blood at this stage. I could see that. And I could hear fear in their voices as well, the doctors. And I thought, I don't know what they're talking about, but this doesn't sound good. They got to work on me, and the consultant who was in charge of the whole thing, he was a really lovely guy. He was quite calming, and he came over to me and said, "Look, we've got to rush you straight into theatre now, but your family are here. Would you like to see them first before you go in?" I said, "Well, yeah, I'd love to." So they all came in. It was like my mother was there, my father, my sister and cousin. It was just mad. I thought, where did they all come from and how did they find out? But there they were. And that was great, actually, because it's really funny, but I felt that sense of needing the love of my family around me. My mother was in tears, she was crying and stuff. She was really distraught, and I was going, "Mum, it's always me bringing drama and trouble to this family. I'm so sorry." She said, "It's not your fault," which of course it wasn't. But I was more concerned also to speak to my friend Anna, who I could see was sat right at the back there, and I said, "I need to speak to her before I go in." And so she stepped forward, and her face was ashen white, and she was shaking her head from side to side, and she said, "I can't believe you survived this. I thought you were dead. I saw you go under." But they announced over the speakers that there'd been a fatality, that you died, So poor girl, what a trauma she'd been through also. So it was at that point that I left all the drama of the hospital. I left all the pain that I was in and, the cold starkness of it all. And I was suddenly transported, if you like, into a beautiful, calm space. And it was quite darkened. It was like I thought it was a darkened room that I was suddenly in. And I figured, okay, I didn't survive it. I'm dead. This is it. I didn't make it. Interestingly enough, I didn't fight it. I didn't feel any sense of fear. I didn't worry. It's not like I wanted to die, but I was quite happy to be in this calm space after all I'd just been through. And I tried to get my bearings, and I kind of looked around me, and I suddenly saw these lovely orb colours that were slowly pulsating all around me that made me feel very calm. And I felt like those lights were there to almost greet me to this new realm that I was suddenly in. And I tried to get my bearings. I suddenly realised I was no longer laid on the hospital trolley that I'd been on for so long, that suddenly now I was on a huge rock. It was like a slate rock, which normally you would be very uncomfortable, but in this particular moment, it was very comfortable. And I noticed I was no longer clothed, but I was covered in this satin sort of silky material, like a beautiful blue material that was reflecting light off it. And I just kind of, I lay back on this rock and closed my eyes. And as I did close my eyes, I could suddenly through my eyelids there was light appearing, and so I opened my eyes, and as I looked up, there were 3 symmetrical grids of white light that were slowly closing in towards me, like I'd never seen before. And I couldn't take my gaze away from this light. It was a very, very bright, pure white light. And normally, say, in this realm, it would be too bright. You wouldn't be able to look at it in the human eye. It'd be like looking at the sun. But here, it was fine. In fact, I couldn't take my gaze away from this light because I realized that the light was more than just light. There was a healing force coming from it. And I felt like this healing energy coming from the lights as they closed in towards me was healing the trauma that my body had just been put through, this horrible, horrific trauma, and the mental trauma as well, of course. So I just closed my eyes and bathed in this kind of beautiful light, and I figured to myself, this is great. Whatever I am, this is really, really great. And I trusted it. And where I was. And so I lay there and continued to bathe in this beautiful energy that I did feel was actually healing, me really quite comfortably. Then I felt the presence of somebody. If you're laying, taking a kip in the afternoon or whatever, and somebody walks in the room, you just know someone's there. And so that's what it was like. And so I opened my eyes and lifted my head. And there, just stood at my feet, was this person. It was like a beautiful androgynous person, a being of light. I say that because this person had this very white blonde hair, but with this skin that was emanating light from within. And wearing a very simple contemporary black t-shirt, which surprised me because I kind of expected to see something more ethereal, if I was being greeted by a being. And but it wasn't. It was a very simple t-shirt. And I looked at this person. I thought, I know this person from somewhere. So I said out loud, who are you? Where do I know you from? I know your face, don't I? We know each other, don't we? And this person just kind of smiled back at me with a kind of knowing smile and didn't actually say it out loud who they were. But I trusted that this person was here to guard me, like a gatekeeper, if you like, to wherever I was at now, and laid my head back again in this complete trust and closed my eyes. And I felt this energy of healing that I was receiving was suddenly becoming more intense. And then I felt the presence of more people. And so I opened my eyes once again, and either side of me, this time there were 2 female forms. The girl to my right, again, was wearing a very simple contemporary sort of dress, like a brown dress, and her skin was dark and long brown hair, and she was quite European in her appearance. And whereas the girl to my left was more Asian, Indian, American Indian, or maybe Brazilian, I'm not sure, but and she was wearing like this beautiful traditional dress, and it was like this white sort of colouring to it, the dress that she wore. Anyhow, they had their hands slowly going over the contours of my body with hardly touching me at all, but just hovering over every single contour of my body. And I closed my eyes, and this sensation was intensified. And I thought, this is going beyond healing the trauma that I'd just been through, the physical trauma. They're going down deeper, down within me. They were taking off the years of baggage that I've been carrying throughout my life, which I carried a lot of. Life had been pretty tough in lots of ways. And suddenly all those years of baggage and hurt and emotional hurt and stuff were being taken away. It's like they were all being peeled off one by one. And they were getting right down to the pure essence of my soul. And it was so liberating. I'd never felt this way before. I'd never felt so freed of all that heaviness. I'd never felt so light and connected with myself, And So yeah, that was an incredibly liberating moment. So I closed my eyes, as I say, and I went with this, and I just decided to absolutely let this get right down and do its work, or for them to do their work, I should say. And then I started to think about my family, because as I said earlier, my mother was in tears, the whole family was in shock, my friend was in shock, and I thought they're going to be pretty torn up now because clearly I didn't make it, and clearly I've died, and so they're going to be upset. So I was concerned, obviously for them. And I thought I'll try and see them. So I tried to edge my way over the side of this huge rock. It was like a medieval altar, is the best way I can describe it. And I eased over and looked, and as I looked down, hoping to see them, I couldn't. There was no sign of them whatsoever. But what I did see was this absolutely awe-inspiring view. It was suddenly I was looking down into a waterfall of stars, and it was let's say a waterfall the size of Niagara Falls or Victoria Falls. It was absolutely vast, but instead of billions of tons of water cascading over the edge, it was billions of stars, all sparkling, and shooting stars flying over the top. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I thought, clearly I'm not in a small darkened space that I thought I was. I'm actually in the universe itself. And I felt this sense of flying through the universe and moving forward with the energy and force of the universe. And as I looked down into this beautiful sight, my eyes started to sort of adjust and fix, and I found myself looking down into this great abyss. It was like looking through one galaxy into another, and I could see all these beautiful colors forming like nebulas and star formations, and it was just like nothing I'd ever seen before in my life, because actually I'd had no interest in the universe whatsoever. To me, the universe was just like this kind of dark black sky with white stars at night, But no, all these beautiful colours and nebulas were forming, and I was going, wow, this is amazing, And I remember edging my way back over and laid down again, and it's interesting because I felt no sense of like sort of, oh my god, my family, I can't see them, what's going to happen now, and stuff like that. There was no sense of all that. All irrational feelings and emotions are gone, and so I was able to rationalize the whole thing. And I remember saying to myself, okay, well, I can't see them now, but you know what, maybe I will see them when they come through and make this crossing themselves. And if I don't, they're going to enjoy all the wonders that I am now, and it's going to be amazing. So that's how level I was about everything. So I laid there and continued to bask in this beautiful force of energy and this feeling of moving forward through the universe. And the most profound moment was to come to me next. As my eyes were still closed, I felt like every single molecule of my body was starting to vibrate, and it was vibrating with a vibration of love, like this sense of unconditional love that was just going through me. It was like all the different types of love that I'd experienced in my life, whether it be the love of my family, my lovers, my pet cat or dog or anything, but it's all condensed into this one sense of feeling of love and self-worth. It was brilliant. And this energy was just so powerful. And I thought, what is happening? Something's happening now really profound. So I lifted my head again and looked, and just beyond the being of light that was stood there that I first told you of was a huge tunnel of white light that was coming through the stars, through the universe, and it was getting closer and closer to me. There was no sense of fear. I mean, I looked at it because it looked pretty foreboding, because it was like surrounded by all these flames that were rotating all the way around, and I didn't know what I was looking at all, because I knew nothing of near-death experiences or anything like this, anything spiritual. And I was just like, what is this? That's all I could think. And but I was realizing that bits of information were slowly coming through, almost like telepathy, is probably the best way to describe it. And I was told that what I was now looking at was the source of all creation. You know, this tunnel of white light was where it's all at. This is not God in the usual human form that most religions attach God to, you know, like, you know, Christianity with the guy on the ceiling of the Vatican in Rome with the long grey beard. No, this was it. This was it, in this beautiful, huge tunnel of white light. And as it got closer and closer, the vibration of love started to become so intense that I started to laugh with absolute joy. And it was at that point, as I laid my head back, I threw my head back, I remember, laughing, you know, that I was suddenly crashing down back into my body in the hospital. I was back, and all the pain started to rush through, and all the beautiful lights that I was looking at before were now replaced by fluorescent strip that was like screaming into my eyes, and the noise I remember in that hospital was like, it was like somebody had put a transistor radio next to my ears. It was like, whoa, no, it was so, yeah.
And you're just back at this point. Now you're back.
I'm back in the hospital. Yeah, I'd come back. Yeah.
Well, first off, I know, you know, you just described a full movie right there. And I know earlier in the story that you mentioned your mom was telling you that it wasn't your fault, but I'm sorry to say, I think you shouldn't have worn such a nice jacket, first of all, especially with the being coming your way wearing a black T-shirt. Maybe this wouldn't have happened, right? Wouldn't have got dragged under. but outside of that, I know, you know, I've had plenty of dreams in my life, nothing of the sort with the detail you just expressed. Outside of what you just said, if you didn't already, what about this experience made it certain to you that this wasn't just a dream?
I knew straight away that it wasn't a dream, you know. I mean, because the whole experience is, I describe it as being ultra real. You know, it's like going from watching an old VHS video to like panoramic, beautiful sort of, you know, whatever you call it, you know, a massive cinematic sort of way of viewing it all. You know, it was just it's just beyond. It's beyond reality, so it's just, yeah. So, but it's definitely not a dream for me, because, you know, the interesting thing is, you know, I remember when I woke up in hospital after I'd been into theatre, because I went into theatre after, you know, and of course I was contemplating what had just happened. I've just been under a train, which is huge, you know, so I was dealing with that, but I was more thinking to myself, wow, this experience I've just had, I've got to tell people about this, and I was scared I was going to forget it, you know. I was scared I was going to forget the whole thing, and I thought, I've got to get this right. And so I thought, I'm going to do a painting. And I'm just going to start do this huge painting. I'd never done anything like this before in my life, but I thought it's got to be a huge painting, like the big sort of Renaissance style ones, you know, try and emulate that, the dramaticness of those paintings. But of course, I've never forgotten it. You know, I'm talking to you about it now, and it's just like it's one of those things that, you know, you realise it's just so powerful, and it's a spiritual awakening basically. And spiritual awakenings don't just come from. You don't have to have a dramatic accident like mine or near-death experience. Even spiritual awakenings can come from all moments in our lives. Normally, sadly, from when we're going through a dark patch, you know, sort of, it's like it's the dark night of the soul, as they call it, you know, is often followed by a spiritual awakening. So yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think everyone can, you know, relate in their own individual way the suffering that we experience in this material form. And I've always said over and over on this podcast, when we talk about grief or death or these traumatic experiences, spiritual awakening is something I personally resonate with. And I think that is the miracle that can come from traumatic experiences, as long as we see it that way. And in your case, you had a very visceral experience that, you know, makes it undoubtable, as opposed to learning a lesson, even though clearly it sounded like you did learn a lot of lessons. And with it being a spiritual awakening, and you mentioning, you know, that you felt this force of healing and, you know, shedding your ego or whatever those material things that we get dragged on this earth with, did that carry over? Like, do you still carry that feeling of feeling like you were able to shed some of that weight into your living life now? Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it's completely changed my whole life. I mean, I realised that the way I was leading life before. I mean, I'm dyslexic, and I'd never got diagnosed with that when I was at school. So I was always treated like I was lazy and and uncooperative and didn't want to learn, which is completely untrue. I wanted to learn, So the trouble is, I mean, we all get these blueprints that we carry away from our years at school, don't we? When we're kids, there's always something that we carry on our shoulders and stuff. And I had plenty of them, and it just since this whole experience, like I said to you, when I was actually in it, that feeling of all those layers being taken off me, I suddenly felt, for the first time in my life, a sense of self-worth, and I felt a sense of self-love, and it's amazing how that has stayed with me. Of course, there's challenges there on a day-to-day basis. That doesn't go away, but it's the way I tackle those challenges now is so different. I mean, before, the way I tried to tackle any challenges that went on in my life was just like I'd try and skim the surface. I'd try and avoid those challenges. If things were going tough for me, I'd go to the nearest bar and have a drink, and then I'd have one or two too many of those drinks, and that wasn't good, and that was just kind of like pouring more onto the wound, as it were. Whereas now it's hard to explain. The difference is really quite profound. And my life is more. It's more creative. Like I said to you, from the moment I did that very first painting, I was so fixated on doing that painting. I remember my sister coming into the hospital to visit the first night, and she said, "Can I get you anything?" And I said, "Yeah, can you get me a small sketch pad and a pencil?" And she went, "Okay," and stuff. So she didn't know what was going on there. But once I started doing that first painting, once I was well enough to do it, I was amazed how it was coming together. I felt like I was getting the crash course I felt like I was still attached to this other realm for a long time as well. It's almost like there's this umbilical cord of energy was still coming through, and I felt they were helping me to pull this painting off. So after I'd done that, I couldn't stop. I was prolific. I kept painting more and more based on my experience. And then I went on to start writing music as well. So my life is basically now, it's a lot more creative and a lot more fulfilling. And so, all those things, there's a lot of synchronicity happened. And I think synchronicity can happen for us all, if we start trying to sort of shy away from any things that come in our life. I don't know. It's totally different. My life. It's a lot more three-dimensional, really. Yeah.
It's remarkable. And I want to ask you, prior to this experience, and perhaps now, if it's shifted, what did you believe before you had this experience into now? What were your beliefs in regards to the afterlife, if there was one, or did you have any religious ties or anything of the sort?
I didn't even think about it. That's it. It's funny because my parents are Christian, and so when we were kids, we go to church and stuff, and I remember I just didn't get it. I didn't feel comfortable as a kid going to church, and my parents were actually quite liberal, and I said, "Look, Mom, I'm not really getting this, And she said, "That's okay. You can stay at home." So that's it. So there was a sense of me. I wasn't atheist. I didn't rebel against the whole idea of Christianity and stuff. But I just, because of that, I never entertained the idea of life or death and or mortality and all the different things. And I was completely non-spiritual, which I'm very spiritual now, totally. That's shifted a huge part of me, which is great, because I think that's another thing that helps me to sort of deal with life in a completely different way. That's made life more three-dimensional, being more spiritual, thinking about it, rather than avoiding it. Like I said earlier, the idea of the universe, I'm so now feel a sense of being attuned with the universe, which I think is something that can benefit any of us, because we've forgotten that, because we've advanced so far as a human race, that we're you and I communicating now through, the wonders of science, which is great. I love all that. I love science and stuff, but it's almost like we've become so attuned with science. Science wakes us up in the morning, it sets our alarms, everything, whereas, we've forgotten the fact that we're part of the animal kingdom. The rest of the animal kingdom surrounding us is still sort of, hot wired to the universe. The universe tells them the birds when to migrate, when to start hatching eggs and all different things, and so there's a sense of me feel, because of my spirituality, feels still very close to the universe itself, the universal pull.
Yeah, and I always feel like you mentioned that umbilical cord. I feel like we all are, connected to that in some sense. Maybe some are more sensitive to it or have experiences like you where it becomes more aware. But I just believe we're all tapped into that and can tap into that, whether we have an experience like that or not. It's just a matter of how do we do it, I guess, is the big question. And there's a million ways out there, I suppose. I haven't had an experience like you have. I personally resonate with this signal of belief in your experience without having that experience. And, it just, even just hearing your story, it just makes me question so much. And often when I get into this weird zone, even though it's only 9:30 right now, I'm already in that place hearing your story. It's always looking back up to the stars for me, looking up to the universe. And, it resonates with me again, because, your connection when you felt like you were riding through that universe, whatever that universe is, heaven or just the universe, it makes me uncomfortable and excited at the same time. So it's fascinating to see how it's overlapped in your life and seeming to have given your life a totally new aspect, which is so profound in the experience that you had. I want to tap back into, the depth of your story. When you were seeing these human forms and these people around you, what did you feel? Like, did you have a body at this time? Did it feel like a body, or were you feeling something different for yourself?
Yeah, I did. I felt a sense of, I'd still got a body. I felt that it was completely me there, and which was good, because I think if I hadn't felt that, I probably would have been slightly disorientated, and so that's kind of good. And I felt there was lots of things that were being put in place there to make me feel a sense of familiarity as well, so that I would feel safe. But, our bodies are also a huge part of our souls, and we also kind of neglect that. We kind of think that our bodies are separate entities to our actual, our emotions and our mind and everything, but everything's all connected, and so there's no surprise, I guess, that was it. But I'd also felt this sense of me more than I'd ever felt before, and that was really, really strong. That was really profound. It was just, it's something, again, going back to this thing of being disconnected with the universe, that I think once you do feel that connection with the universe, that you do become more, it's like meditation, isn't it? It's like meditation when you meditate. I don't know if you do yourself, but I meditate these days, and anything like that, or any form of Reiki healing, or that, all those different things, shiatsu, they help you to realize that that your mind and your body and your emotions are all the same, and that you're suddenly you're part of that universal pull, that energy that's moving forward, because the universe wants us to succeed. The universe wants us to keep recreating and moving forward and stuff. So why not try and connect with it?
Yeah, and this healing aspect that you had, I'm always fascinated in these stories because, I've heard a fair share of near-death experiences on the podcast and stuff that I've just explored. And it seems like there are a lot of similarities in some of these stories as in regards to the feeling of the vibrating love, the power of that powerful love that you express that I feel like, most people haven't even touched, and you got even closer to it. Mm-hmm. That maybe these experiences teach each person that has gone through it what they need. And it sounded like when you're telling me that you had this release of baggage, that maybe that is specifically what you needed. So in regards to that, what do you think that is? Like, what do you think you experienced? Like, do you think you got a taste of what the afterlife is, and there's a whole nother level that you didn't get to? Like, what is the meaning of an afterlife, and what happens after we die with your experience?
Yeah, I totally believe that that's what it was. I totally felt like, both my parents actually passed in the last few years, actually, and as much as I obviously was very cut up and missed them terribly, and went through all the emotions of grief of them dying, it was so helpful for me to know that I knew where they were going. I knew that they were going to be experiencing all the joys that I was. I remember saying that when my mother passed, I remember going into the hospital and they allowed us to go, behind the little curtain, in the bed and stuff like that, where my mother was laid out. And we went in one by one on our own, and I went over and I remember I kissed my mum on her forehead to say goodbye. And I said out loud to her, I said, "Mom, you're going to love it where you were going now. You're just going to love it, and stuff." That's how much I believed in it, that was the next stage, the departure lands, if you like,
Did you have any feeling of, you were here before? Like, was there any downloads or any thought now, maybe how you've contemplated in this human skin, if you will, of we've been here before, or there's any aspect of reincarnation involved?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I totally felt that. And, because like I said to you, there was all these bits of information that were coming through to me, and they continued to come through and still do, and most of those bits of information were, yes, that we're reincarnated, because let's face it, if that is a departure lands and go wherever the next place is, that it's the billions of life forms that are dying on a daily basis, a monthly, yearly basis. There's no point or room to have them anywhere. There's just going to be lingering around, and I just kind of figure that, that the soul is such a powerful entity, and that it's no surprise to me that the soul and reincarnation comes back into another body. Whatever life form that is, may not be human, it could be animal, it could be insect, bird, a tree, but yeah, I do certainly believe that's the case.
Yeah, the reincarnation thing is a whole nother ball game, and that is something that seems to pop up more often than not with these near-death experiences. I always look for the patterns and just seeing how all these stories kind of tie together, and when I start seeing these patterns, it just makes me think even deeper, and it seems the more I know, the less I know every time I hear these freaking stories, to be honest. But it's comforting at the end, because everything you just said is just so, I don't know, it can go two ways, because I had a conversation with someone online that always seems to challenge these stories and just doesn't believe in an afterlife. He always says he's an atheist. It's always a great conversation. And, part of these stories and sharing these stories, I want to create dialogue. I want to hear different people's beliefs. And to me, it's like whatever makes you tick, whatever makes you feel good, then your beliefs don't bother me, but I still like to have the dialogue. Yeah. And so he had a perspective with his atheistic belief that there not being an afterlife gives him more meaning to this life, because this is all we have. So with you now having this information downloaded that there is an afterlife from your perspective, does that give this life more meaning? Like in flip perspective of him saying having an afterlife, no afterlife, gives him more meaning because it makes this life so rich and this is the only life we have. What is your perspective of knowing there is more and living this life now?
Yeah, it actually gives this life more meaning, because I think that there's a big thing, there's an underlying thing that most of us, well, I've come across a lot of people, get in touch with me and stuff, and who do fear death. A lot of young people as well, and the fear is just so profound for them, and so that fear is really, it's kind of like it's jolting their life, that it's not allowing them to enjoy life because the fear is overwhelming them so much. And I think that the majority of us probably have that feeling of that underneath, generally speaking. And I think once that's gone, you don't. I mean, I'm in no hurry, to sort of leave this life and go to the next. Even though I know what awaits is beautiful, I want to continue enjoying this one, because, I mean, the other thing is that what I did realize that this world that we live in, this beautiful planet that we live in, really is heaven. It really is heaven on earth. In fact, I since my NDE, I started watching documentaries, and still do, all about astronauts going out to space and stuff like that, because I'm fascinated by the universe and stuff now, and the science of it all. Do you know what really hit me was that the amount of astronauts, I mean, they're the scientists of all scientists to be able to do that job, and when they're out there in space, all these guys were coming back, and they were looking back at Earth and saying, wow. And they said what I just said. When they came back through the Earth's atmosphere, they said, when you go through and you come back to Earth, you realize how beautiful our planet is. All the rich colors, the greens, the blues, everything, the oceans is just amazing, And it really is. And, if only we could send all the world leaders on a little probe out to space and just circle around our planet and realize how beautiful it is, it would probably change a lot.
Yeah, I think that's called something with the people that see Earth from, in outer space. There's some kind of perspective or theory shift, and I could be completely butchering this, but I feel like it almost had the effect of what you just expressed, of the seeing this beauty, and also the opposite effect, where it's people see this they see this side of the world, like they're like get so overwhelmed by it, they're like, holy shit, it kind of starts freaking them out, because that's sometimes where I go. But in regards to, I'm kind of going back and forth a little bit. I'm just curious about the logistics of it. Like when you're saying you received this information, this downloads, if you will, what is that process like for you? Is that just a knowingness? Walk me through you receiving this information and how that actually panned out.
It's something, as I say, that continues on, and I find that it continues on through my creativity. Because when I first came back, a lot of people say to me, "Oh, you must have been really gutted when you came crashing back into the hospital, into your body." And I said, actually, I wasn't. Even though it was amazing where I'd just been, all I could think was, why have they sent me back? What is my destiny now? That is clearly, I have a purpose now, and I need to follow that through. And I started, following that through. I discovered what it was. First of all, I thought it was going to be, caring for people and being a healer or what have you, And but I realise now that my work is by helping people through my art and my music. But it's also helping me as well. It's just I'm constantly growing through the work that I do. I've just been commissioned to do a huge painting actually for a spiritualist church, and that was one of the. I was really pleased when I got that commission, because it was just something that was really important to me to do. And I've spent a lot of time, a lot of energy just getting that and pulling it together. And I look at that painting now and I just think, wow, I can't believe I've created this. I still don't, I still feel it's incredible. And it's this because I feel like I'm still sort of channeling thoughts and ideas and knowledge through. But beyond that, I also I've realised that I don't use my thinking mind so much as I used to, and I think once you switch off the thinking mind, the egoic mind, if you like, then all the ideas start to come through, and they're the authentic ones, and they're the ones that are the real ones. They're the ones that are right, and they're the ones that work, and yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like that channeling, and I always believe like we could tap into this, and yeah, you've had this experience, but I'm just a believer that we all have this capability to tap into this, whatever this is, this frequency, this vibration to source, or whatever the heck's going on in the universe, and it seems like that's what you're tapped into. But real quick, just to clarify, this painting ability and creativity that you have now, you mentioned that you weren't doing this prior to this experience. Do I have that correctly?
That's right, yeah. I loved, when I was at school, I loved drawing and sketching and stuff like that, but I was completely dissuaded by the teachers because they said, you need academic qualifications, if you want to take this any further. You're going to work in the factory and that's it, and which I didn't want to do that. So, I moved to London. I thought if I moved to London, then maybe I've got a chance. And but as soon as I got there, it was expensive, like all capital cities. And I was working on construction sites, working in kitchens, washing dishes, pots, pans, anything I could get my hands on, to make money. And that just wasn't for me. It just wasn't working for me. I realised the guys on the construction sites were happy there, and they were good at that job. I couldn't do it. So yeah, all the gears were grinding for me, basically. Yeah.
That's some wild shit. I mean, you're coming back with the ability to do what you're doing now. I mean, I don't know how else to explain that. And I related to, I've heard a lot of I don't know if it's like Rick Rubin or just other creative minds. They look at creativity, ideas, and some of the things we do as this muse, it's like as if these ideas aren't coming from. It's maybe coming from within, but then from within is maybe tapping into something that you're kind of explaining in a well. And it's even just as a creative force, I like the theory of what I'm trying to explain is how it's this muse, and we're kind of tapping in, and we're an antenna, and we're getting this information, whether creatively or whatever it may be, from a source. And I'm just personally, interpreting your story and what you're explaining me as that in a way. I may be mistaken, but that's how I'm taking it. It's like you're almost tapping into this, whatever this the umbilical cord, or we're tapping into this frequency, and we're getting this creative ability that is ours, but it's not ours. And I just believe we have that ability to tap into that. And again, I don't want people to feel like, oh shit, I gotta wear a nice jacket and get it stuck under a train, have this experience to tap into this creative ability. It's like, no, it's always there to tap into. It's just, again, I think I'm pulling from shedding that weight and just shedding this stuff that really isn't us and then become this pure form, whether it's through meditation. I think it's a discovery that we have to figure out. But at first I feel like it's that decision to believe in that in the first place. And then from there, maybe it all just unfolds. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I used to play guitar very badly. I used to thrash out 3 chords in a punk band and stuff. And then after the accident, I couldn't do that because the arm got bashed up really badly. And but I write music for orchestra now. I still can't read or write a single note of music, but I've been writing for orchestra. And the same thing, just like the paintings, I had this sense of like, not sort of self-assured cockiness, but it was more like a sense of like, why not? Let's just try this. And and the ideas were coming through from, as you just beautifully put, just from somewhere else, But that's why we love watching. Sports players, for example, Usain Bolt, the fastest man in the world. And I remember seeing him interviewed after he'd just broken the world record, and they said to him afterwards, they said, how did you feel when you were running that race? And he said, I was cool, man, I was relaxed, and they were going, you were relaxed, you're the fastest man in the world. And he was going, yeah. And I thought, there you go, that's it. He wasn't allowing the thinking mind to kick in. He was like tapping into that other universal energy that was helping him to run at a great speed and break that world record. That's why we like watching all these guys. That's why we start, we watch tennis. Tennis is, if you think about it, if you came from another planet, you think, are we insane? They're just sitting there in crowds watching, 2 guys hitting a ball backwards and forwards for hours on end. But we watch them because they're tapping into that other universal force. And so we're drawn to it, we're fascinated by that. I
couldn't agree more. And especially, I'm a big sports guy, I still play sports, and understanding the idea that, yes, it's just a game, but whenever even like today on social media, you see people doing the most ridiculous shit that on the surface level, this looks so dumb. Like, why are you juggling 4 big boxes of cereal, but they're doing it in a crazy way? And it's like, I feel like the art of tapping into something that is difficult, and it is maybe considered the flow state, or just this ability where when you, again, back to the sports example, is these people are they're almost, it's an out of body experience. They're in the zone, and which comes with that calmness when you tap in. And you've had this experience which may have given you an intuitive path to be able to do that with these creative abilities that you've discovered. But how do you do that? Do you have any logistical way or earthly way to explain to people that haven't had these experiences on how to get there? And I know you just tapped into about shedding that thinking brain and tapping in, but step by step, if you think you even have a theory on it, how can we tap into that?
Yeah, but that's the starting point. Switch off the mind. Switch off that mindset saying I can't do this. I'm not good enough. I can't pull this out of the hat. Taking away the element of time as well. We set ourselves deadlines and we say, I'm not working fast enough on this, or nothing's coming through. There's no ideas. This is, and so people then start to go, they sort of implode, as it were, and then that's when all the cards start to tip over. Just try to let go. Whatever I'm working on, there are days when I feel, no, it's not coming together. It's not working, but that's okay. I just think, just stop and go and watch some TV, do something really, and just come back maybe the next day or in a couple of days' time, and suddenly you'll find that it will start to work again. It'll start to come through, and you don't have to really go into any sense of deep meditation about it all either. It's really just literally getting away from this 21st century way of living, and that we are led to think everything's fast and everything's that's the trouble now with all the stuff we watch on our phones, whether it's TikTok or YouTube and stuff like that. It always looks like it's really easy to do, isn't it? You get these guys, when they show these guys kind of say, hey, you could plaster your own ceiling. This is how quick and easy it is to do, and you watch it in 30 seconds. You go, wow, that's really easy. How come that good? But let's get away from all that stuff and just take your time and just, I don't know. You don't necessarily have to be an artist or a musician. You'll just find that there are, that's the one thing that happened in the pandemic, when that happened, that was one of the positives I felt at the beginning. When we first went into lockdown here in the UK, everyone started going onto Zoom and stuff like that. And everyone started posting on social media, hey, I've started baking bread for my family for the first time in my life. Hey, I'm doing this. I'm teaching my kids how to paint or whatever. People found all these hidden skills that they got within themselves because suddenly the world stopped. Suddenly all that we've got to get there sort of went, And so just try and take a bit of that on, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's just as simple as just doing it. And again, it comes back from this letting go of that noise and that annoying roommate in our head talking shit about can't. It's just sometimes getting started, as simple and cliche as it is the biggest one, and just taking a leap, even if you're doubting yourself. And then eventually, hopefully, that dialogue within will clear up and you just start realizing that we can do a lot more than we think. And then when you hear stories like yours of tapping into this muse, if you will, it's just the possibilities are endless, and that's why I think it's so important to share stories like yours and showing you that you can start at A and end up at Z. One off-topic, on-topic question I want to ask you: why do you think some people that have these near-death experiences don't have an experience like yours, and some do?
Yeah, I get asked that question quite a lot, and it's a huge question that I haven't got a straight answer for. It happened to me because, all I know from my own point of view that my life was in such dire straits. I was about to be evicted from my apartment. I got bailiffs chasing after me. I was drinking heavily to try, as I said earlier, because that's the way I dealt with it. I was broke. I was just sunk right down to rock bottom, and I couldn't have sunk any lower. And so my own personal journey was that I needed that spiritual awakening. I needed that moment to sort of turn around and say, look, you could do this with your life. This is where you can go now, which I wouldn't have seen that at all. Never in a million years, And I don't know. It's a big one. It's a big. Sorry that I'm not able to give a straight answer to that, because there's certain things that are so big that none of us can really answer, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I don't think you don't need to apologize. I think you actually did answer it, to be honest. I believe certain people have these experiences, any experience in life, whether spiritual or not. And I just personally, my wacko mind believes we have these experiences and interpretations of events when we quote unquote need it. And I'm sure there's plenty of people that have had near-death experiences or certain experiences where they may have felt that they needed certain messages or this, that, and the other. And if they didn't get it, you maybe could be pissed off because you feel like you need it, but maybe you don't. And I think it goes back to, again, what you just said about there's just maybe just an understanding that we're maybe just not quite capable yet or at all to comprehend. And I think once I let go of me personally, again, I let go of that needing to know and just tying it into there's just so much that we just maybe literally can't comprehend based on this earthly, we just can't comprehend it. And then it's like, and then I go to the theoretical mind and philosophical mind and think about what is, what's not. And just, it's again, going back to that shedding and just letting go. It's like, I have no idea. Even when people speak as if they do know, it's like, maybe they don't know either. Maybe they do know. I have no idea.
It. Some people are really good at that, aren't they? So some people are really good at waffling you with science and stuff to making you feel like, oh, okay, that guy knows what he's talking about. But I mean, here's a good example, which is slightly different from what we're talking about here. But there's this guy I love, a UK scientist called Professor Brian Cox, and he runs all these the BBC programs all about the universe. And I was watching a program with him, a couple of months back, and it got to the end of this series where he's exploring the universe and all our galaxy and stuff, and he was talking all about it. And he actually finished it off by saying, he said, you know what, everyone thinks as all these super scientists and stuff like that we've got all the answers to the universe. He said, you know what, we're only just touching on the tip of understanding how the universe works. We're constantly exploring, but we still don't have all the answers. It's too huge, it's too vast to be able to turn around and say, yeah, we've got it, And so I guess that's a bit like that with me, with the answer to your question.
I couldn't agree more. It's so nice to hear, a brilliant scientist even explain that, because to me, science, as with a complete lack of understanding, like I'm the wrong person to say this, but to me, science is just pushing the ball forward, and it's just constantly discovering more and more. Like, science is not an answer. Science is just an exploration, and you might get some kind of hints and more understanding that seem like answers, but it's like, again, what I said earlier, the more we learn, the less we know, and which is so counterintuitive, but to me, that's how I see life. Like, literally, the more stories I hear, the more information I get, the more I'm like, I know nothing. Even when I know more and learn more, there's just so much more we don't understand, and it's so exciting and scary and fun and fucking, excuse my French, wild.
Go for it.
But it's like, it's just it's exciting to me, and I think we can either look at the unknown as fear, because I think a lot of people, including me at times, fear the unknown, but I think the unknown is the exciting part, and there's just so much more to discover, and it makes life more exciting, the fact that we know so little, because that means we're going to know some more, and at the same time so little, and it's just a cluster shit of just confusion but excitement to me. And to hear experience like you, I like having these stories and conversations, early in my day, because it's just going to mash up the rest of my day, no matter how many times I hear these stories. But listen, man, I really want to thank you for, sharing your experience and your story. Like, I know you've done plenty of times. And my last question, and I'm going to give you the reins to say whatever you want to say. At this point, do you have any fears towards death?
No, I don't. No, I can say that outright. Yeah, I don't fear death. It's because I know what awaits us, and this, my whole life has just been altered in such a huge way. I mean, I did actually, I had some internal bleeding a couple of years back from the accident, and which we didn't know what it was, and we didn't know whether I remember speaking before I went into surgery for that, because I didn't know what it was. It could have been serious, and it could have been life-threatening. And there was that. I remember at that point thinking, this is really going to test me now. And I thought, no, I didn't kind of, obviously there were, I went through all the worries of it all, and, all the human elements are still there. But no, I thought, I don't fear, if this is it now, that's fine. Because the soul is such a huge entity, as I say. I believe that the soul comes into life and death are so similar. You know, when a baby is born into this world, it's screaming and crying like you think it's going through the worst trauma in its life. You know, and so that's how powerful the soul is, and I firmly believe that my soul will continue on. You know, it's the next stage of the journey. After this, wherever it goes, it will continue on.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's very in line with how I personally believe. I'm always curious to hear listeners or anyone that's listening right now to share what you think in regards to your beliefs, how it correlates with David's. If there's anything that you resonate with or don't resonate with, I always want to create dialogue. And man, I want to thank you again for sharing that, because I couldn't agree more. That I feel like I even said it yesterday. I'm working on something I was writing down. Like death and life are just two sides to the same coin, and it's just it's maybe there's a million sides. I don't know how many sides this coin has, but I think it might even go deeper than that. And especially hearing stories like yours, it just continues to get more convoluted. But this is the point of the show where if there's anything you want to plug or mention, any last words, or nothing at all, I want to give you the mic to kind of cap off the episode. But I really appreciate your time.
I mean, well, if people are interested themselves in looking at my paintings or listening to my music, please, you can follow me on all the social media platforms. Maybe go to the website. If my website's called shineonthestory.com. So if you can go there. And there's a book out called Shine On. That's hence the name of the website. So if you're interested in that, there's a free chapter. The first chapter is free to download and read. You can get a taste of the book, see if you're interested in it. You can stream the music, the first symphony that I wrote, for free, and then enjoy the paintings. And you'll see the links to my social media if you're interested in following me and seeing where my journey continues, the next new painting that I'm working on when that's ready, and all that kind of stuff. So please do follow me.
Very cool. And as usual, everyone that is new to the show or listens to the show, I'll always link, my guests, including David's website and socials in the description, wherever you're listening, whether it's YouTube, social, Spotify, yada, yada, yada. David, thank you so much, man. This is so much fun. I really appreciate you meeting a stranger, sharing your story. And I tend to find myself in Europe once or twice a year, so I would love to stay in touch. And if there's anything you ever need, anything I can do to be of value to you, we'd love to stay in touch, and maybe I'll see you across the pond.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, and everyone,
chatting with you.
Likewise, and for everyone, thank you for tuning into the show. Another episode of Dead Talks. Until next time. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Dead Talks. Please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell. That'll give you updates as to when we post a new video, more episodes, and more content in general. We are streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and all that. And also find us on Instagram at Dead Talks Podcast or www.deadtalks.net. Thank you so much.